Hello, ladies and gentlemen and programmers. We're going to do part 3 using an array to control multiple objects, but before we control multiple objects, we have to add the objects to the world and an array using a loop. What does that mean? You're going to find out. Alright, here we go. Let me show you what we're trying to accomplish overall. And you don't have to do this exact thing, but you can do something of the sort. So here's my good guy, here's a bunch of bad guys. Up here, I added them to the world using a loop. I also added them to an array using a loop, and because I added them to an array, I can say you do this, 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 you do this. We talk to them all at the same time and have them do the same thing. Well, let's see what that same thing is. So I'm going to run it. Nothing happens. Look, these guys are going back and forth on the platforms, right? Except for I get the trigger and all of a sudden, they all come falling down and they kill me. Okay, so it adds an interesting challenge to the game where you could do this where they all fall off the platforms. You could do it where you add they don't shoot and then all of a sudden they now do shoot. You can do whatever you want, but the idea is you have them all do something at the same time. Okay, all right. So how are we going to do this? All right, we read this. Alright, so the first step is to add a method to the monster class, or whatever your bad guy class is, so that they fall off the platform or do something. Okay, so I'm going to go to my monster class, and let's see what this thing is that we're going to do. Okay, here is the code for my bad guy, my monster. Okay, so the first thing I did is I made a Boolean flag. Private Boolean has to turn at platform edge. And I set it equal to true. So obviously if he has to turn at the platform edge, what does he do? He has to turn at the platform edge. If that becomes false, then obviously he no longer has to do it. So let's press Control F. We're going to find all the variations of that. Okay, we don't need to see that. We don't need to see that, but we do need to see this. Alright, so look what I did to my turn at platform edge. All I did is I put if he has to turn at the platform edge, then he has to platform edge. So if this is true, it's actually going to turn at the platform edge. If this somehow turns false, then it no longer does this anymore. Okay, so it looks at this Boolean flag to see if it actually does this or not. Okay, so far so good. Let's keep going. Okay, so now I made this new method, public void switch, if he has to turn at platform edge. Long name, but it makes it really clear what it does. You can name it what you want. All I did is this, has to turn out at platform edge equals not has a turn at platform edge. It just switches it to the opposite. So we can, if it's true, it now becomes false. If it's false, it becomes true. You could do it easier. You could just say has to turn at platform edge equals false. That would work just as well. Okay. All right. So that's it. We wrote the code for it. Okay. So now we can test it and see if it works. All right. So let's hit reset and see what happens. Okay, so we're going to hit run, and here's what they do. Now let's right click on this guy and just click on it. Hey, let's say switch if he has to turn at platform edge. So I just done it to this one guy, right? But all of a sudden now he falls off. So the idea now is that we're going to put all these guys in an array, okay, and we're going to ask them to do it all at once. Okay, so let's take a look at, I did it in level 2. So you can do it wherever you want. So let's start off with how we're going to do this. Or actually, let's look at the spiel first. Okay, so the first step 2 is to create the array. Okay, so we're going to say private monster bracket tells it, hey, this is going to be an array. Monster array equals new monster 10. What that says is this particular array is going to hold 10 monsters. So we have 0 through 9, which is 10, right? Okay, so the first step is to create the array. So let me show you the code. I just showed you the code, but let's look at it in here. So you're going to say private monster. By the way, it goes right up at the top. This array is an instance variable. So private monster array equals new monster 10. So look, we have our 10 empty boxes, right? And at some point we need to stick some monsters in there. We needed to step 3 initialize the monster array. Okay, well, we're going to do this different than, are we? Yeah, this is different than we've done in the past. We're going to use a loop to do this, and at the same time we stick them into the array, we're going to also stick them into the world. So let's look at let's see if we can find the code. So I made this thing that says add monsters to the world and array with loop. So you see I add monsters and I add zombies, which is a little bit misleading because they're all monsters. They're all of monster class. Okay, Control F. Okay, so I'm going to hit next. I'm going to hit next. Okay, here we go. Public void add monsters to world and array with loop. Well, here's what I do. I say for int I equals 0. I is less than 5. Well, how many am I going to add? 5, because I'm going to add 5 monsters and 5 monsters that look like zombies. Okay, so for int I, so I'm using a for loop, so my local variable I stands for iteration is 0. We're going to do it until I, as long as I is less than 5, and we're going to increment it by 1, I++. So look, I make a box called monster, local variable called monster, the only thing that can go into a monster. And what am I going to stick into it? A new monster that looks like a monster. So I have all the parameters for my monster. Okay, then what am I going to do? I'm going to add that guy. So if I had a box, I would called monster, I put a brand new monster in it, and then what do? I dump that monster into the world right here. Okay, but now here's a line of code we haven't seen before. Now we're going to say monster array I equals monster. Well, what is that? Well, monster array I, we know the first iteration through I is 0, right? So what are we doing? We're saying, hey, monster array 0, what do you equal? So we just took that box called monster, we dumped him into the world, so this guy exists in the world, but he also exists in our array. He's in 2 places at once. Okay, so we put that new monster in the box called array 0, and we also added him to the world at this location. Then what happens? Our loop continues on. I is now equal, I++, I is now equal to 1, right? So monster. So we have our box called monster. It disappears and is remade, okay, with nothing in it. And what are we going to add to it? A brand new monster, right? And now what are we going to do with this brand new monster? We're going to add it at scooch it over a little bit. So before 0 times 25 is 0, 1 times 25 is 25, so scooch it over a little bit more, and then it's going to add it to monster array, what's I equal to 1, and so it dumps him into the world, and then we stick this guy in, right? So it's going to go through. Okay, so this is the code. This is what it looks like. Let me show it to you again. Obviously yours is going to be different because you're not going to be adding monsters, you're going to be adding whoever your bad guy is. Okay, so we added 5, and then I did this one too. Now look at this one, it's different. I'm add zombies to the world with an array. Okay, so it's still a monster, but I call him zombie. So I made a box called zombie. What are we going to put into it? A monster. What are we going to stick in the box? A new monster that looks like a zombie. So I have my zombie guys in there, and then I'm going to add the zombie to the world, and then I'm also going to add the zombie to the array. Now look at this. Now we don't want to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 monsters and then accidentally stick zombies on top, right? So this array needs to start at what? 5 through 9. So let's see what it looks. How do we make it go from 5 to 9? Well, instead of int I equals 0, int I equals 5. So the first time through, we added to monster array 5, then 6, then 7, then 8, then 9. Okay? Okay, so that's how we do that. Okay, I think that's pretty good for one day, right? So what you're going to get when you're done, if it works, and by the way, don't forget to call it from, you got to call it from your constructor, right? Add monsters, add zombies. You got to call it from your constructor. So what do you get at this point? You should get it to where your zombies or your bad guys are added to the world. They're also added to the array, and in the next installation of these videos, I will show you how to actually talk to them all at one time. Okay, that's good for today. Let's double check the spiel and make sure. Yeah, next time we're going to do part 5.